That's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine.
Hello, and welcome back to Discworld. It's been a bit. I've gone to 2 different places since I filmed the last Discworld video. I'm no longer in my washing and drying room in my old house that I've been in since I was in 3rd grade, and also was the entrance to my house because we never used the front entrance. But then I was staying at my grandma's for a bit. Now I'm at my grandpa's. And I'll be leaving that soon, at my very own place. Whole bunch of change going all around. I'm also a bit thinner than I was when I filmed the last Discworld video. So all that to say, a lot of change has happened. But much like the Dresden Files, but also in a vastly different way, I find these to be an amazing palate cleanser in between larger things, whether that be classical literature, contemporary literature, or sci-fi and fantasy all in one. Terry Pratchett is a genius. Now, it may not be the same as a George R.R. Martin or a Stephen Erickson, but in how he blends the absurd and the comedical, the comedic, that's, yeah, is beautiful. It is the entire setting of Discworld is such an absurd thing, and yet it just works when you're reading it. But on to what this book is actually about. Discworld Book 4, Mort. One of the most popular ones to start your introduction into it. I think people will technically mention Small Gods, Guards, Equal Rights, or Mort as excellent entry points into the franchise, typically is what I hear. Mort does not really require you to know anything in the previous 3 books. There are little connections here that you can appreciate if you've been reading in publication order. Or even, like, I have a friend, Some Ordinary Game, not Some Ordinary Game, Some... I said Some Ordinary Gamers, which is a completely different person. Some okay dude. Anyway. He's read Guards. I have not, because I'm going in publication order. So we start with book 4, and Guards, I don't remember which one it is, but it's later down the line. He really loves Guards, and Guards primarily takes place in Ankh-Morpork, which is a city in this world. And it's not a major aspect of this book, but it is something here, so there is a connection there with that. And there's a connection to the first 2 books with Rincewind, who does make an appearance. I don't think it's too much of a spoiler. It's not a very big story arc. He's just kind of there. His arc is next book. So, but ultimately, Death is, he wants vacation. He wants a bit time off from his job. So he needs an assistant to keep doing his job while he goes on vacation. Mort is a simple man, and his father tries to help him find work, and luckily, Death is hiring. And so Mort ends up working for Death. And while Death goes on vacation, he tries to become a little bit more human, while Mort starts to morph a little bit more into Death itself, or at least his aspects. But he's not fully deaf. So he makes some decisions which has some big ramifications if not fixed. Without spoilers, is ultimately the plot. I don't know if you really go to these books for the plot, but in between the whimsy and the humor, there's also, I hear it gets better in other books, but there are these hints of deeper emotional truths that are resonating. Specifically, early on in the book, Mort must go and reap some souls, and there's an old witch, there's an old monk, and there's something poignant about it in between those things and other little moments here that make you go, "Well, there's something deeper here," and I really appreciated that. But I think this is a fantastic entry point. You don't need to know about Rincewind. You don't need to know about the girl who wishes to become a wizard in equal rights. You can read this kind of in a vacuum and be completely fine. And it's a great entry point. It's one of the better books. I do think books 1 and 2 are a lot weaker. Even book 3, I think, is a bit weaker. I feel like he's improving as he goes along. Minus the next one. But it's just a lot of fun. And also hints at some more emotional stuff. So, I think it's worth your time. And it's short. It's not a very big investment or commitment. If you just want to read one book to see like how you feel about Terry Pratchett's writing. So that's pretty much it for non-spoilers. Not that I have too many spoilers, but if you don't want any spoilers, now would be the time to go. So what do we got here? We got Mort is useless to all, and he's useless to his dad. He's useless to everyone else. He just can't do nothing. So luckily for Death, that he hires Mort. And like I said, while Ankh-Morpork may not be essential character or essential setting in the story, it is rather prominent, which is why I figured it's worth mentioning, considering it will also be a prominent city in future books. We meet Miss Isabel, who we learn is the adopted daughter to Death because her parents died, and Death, for whatever reason, decided not to also kill her, but to take her in as his own. We also have a butler by the name of Albert, who's pretty fun. I also just love this quote because it's somehow fourth wall breaking and yet so perfectly in line with the absurdity of this series. But death, death is death. In real life, death is when your life ceases. Or as a church may tell you, or maybe even Tolkien will tell you, death is not the end. You merely change locations. Or as Gandalf would put it, death is just another path. But death is death. We all must face it, religious, non-religious. It is something inevitable. That we, some of the greatest sci-fi stories of all time involve immortality and trying to avoid that. You go back to the Gothic with the vampire, right? These ancient beings that have forsaken their souls for chance of long, everlasting life. But is there any soul left to maintain when you do such a thing? All that sort of shenanigans. But in reality, there is no immortality. Death will grab a hold of you. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe it will be of old age, maybe it will be because you get in a car accident, maybe it will be because of cancer. There is no real rhyme or reason. There is no morality behind it. There's morality behind like murderers and stuff and what they choose to take a life, but death itself, there is no morality behind it. It's just the consequence of actions and outcomes and unforeseen things that are out of your hands. So it's something we must all grapple with, is my point. And in Discworld, death has a face, he has a voice, he is a being, he's a person. So the book, describes him as an anthropomorphic personification, a physical personification of death itself. I know it's a very simple thing, but I just thought it's really clever to say that in universe. Mort shows compassion, which is something that him and Death have to argue over. And Death goes, listen, it's not immoral what I'm doing. I am simply doing my job. There's no good or bad about it. One way or the other, whether this person is murdered or they fall off a cliff, it's not my business. My business is to collect what I must. Like, it's got nothing to do with my personal feelings. It's their time to go. But Mort's compassion is what keeps his job. So when Death goes on vacation and Mort takes over, he goes to find this old witch. And she goes, oh, it's finally time, huh? You're a bit late. And I really can't do it justice, so you really just have to read it. But it was such a poignant little moment. And to follow up with that, he goes to find this monk. And because the monk believes in reincarnation, that's another interesting thing about the setting, is while there may be a true God and there may be all this and that, whatever you believe death is what death is for you. So, like, if you're an atheist in the world of Discworld, when death comes to reap your soul, you will simply cease to be. That's it. You're done. If you believe there's a heaven, then death will take you to, I guess, a simulation of that? I'm not exactly sure. I don't know. Do people that believe in heaven have each their own individual realm? I don't know. But the monk believes in reincarnation. So he will be reincarnated into the next life, forgetting all of his memories. And you only come to remember all of his lives at the very end of his life, which is interesting. That was also a poignant moment. We also learn about these people called the listeners. I don't know how important this is, but I like the idea. Their entire religion is focused on finding the voice of God. And by that, take any religious text, but we'll go with the Bible because it's the one I'm most familiar with. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Let there be light, and there was. So in Discworld, there was a first word uttered that sprang life into creation. And in Discworld, because it's flat, the listeners believe that it is still echoing throughout time to this very day on the disc. And that if they listen hard enough, they could perhaps catch the voice. They could hear the very first word uttered by God himself. And I think that's vastly interesting, actually, as a concept. Not that I think the series is going to take that super seriously, but also just clever, just a clever thing that Terry Pratchett does. Mort saves a princess named Kelly, but she was meant to die at that very moment. In history, in the span of eternity, that was where she died, but Mort prevented it, and that will cause problems. Since Kelly is supposed to be dead, but isn't, people will look at her and immediately try to ignore her because there's something instinctually inside their brain that goes, no, this isn't right. I can't be talking to you. I can't be looking at you because you should be dead, which causes her distress. We also learn, just looking at the place that Death stays in with his adopted daughter and his butler and now Mort, whether it be a garden or a pool or this or that, it's all just copies of things Death has seen and not even real and true. Death's job is to take away life when it is time. But he cannot create anything, which I think is interesting. We also learn, big thing, that Albert used to be an ancient wizard of the wizard school. And he goes down there where he happens to meet Rincewind. We'll talk more about Rincewind in the next video, but he does meet him. But essentially to set things right as they have to. And Mort ends up marrying Isabel. So there's that. But that's pretty much it for my spoilers of Mort. Again, no matter what spoilers or plot synopsis or anything I could say about this book, it really doesn't do it justice unless you read it yourself. I just cannot do it the adequate justice it deserves. But if you wanted to know if Terry Pratchett was for you and you didn't want to invest a large sum of money and time into a series like this, I would recommend Mort as an excellent starting point to determine for you how you feel. But that's it. Anyway, guys, I'll see you next time. Until then, try to enjoy life. It's very easy to get cynical. It's very easy to get depressed. It's very easy to think it'd be better not to be here. But then you read stuff like this, and maybe it changes your perspective. But no matter who you are, it's a good thing you're here. Never forget that. And many things in life can seem like the absolute end of the world. And that's not to be dismissive of your feelings. It's not to invalidate you. I know so many things that were life-shattering to me that are a distant memory. Most pains can fade away given time. I think Better Call Saul said it best. There's a scene between Saul Goodman, Jimmy McGill, and Mike. If you haven't seen Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad, it doesn't matter, but Mike, this character, he goes, one day you're going to wake up, you're going to brush your teeth and go about your day, and you're going to realize you haven't thought about it. And that's the moment when you realize you can forget. And once you realize that, it all gets a little bit easier. I'm glad you're here. Keep sticking around. And see me when I discuss Discworld Book 5, Sorcery. Until then.